Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon. This is John Suntress. It's December and it's holiday season. Consider a lot of the guests on Word Balloon as gift ideas because I really think a lot of the creators have new product, no matter what it is, whether it's a film or a TV show or obviously comic book, a graphic novel, whatever. And, of course, our regular sponsor, Aftershock, should be considered that way as well. If you have questions or comments about the show, reach me via email. Best way to contact me, john@wordballoon.com. Also, follow me on Twitter under John Wordballoon and on Facebook on my name, John Suntress, and the Word Balloon Network. Thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for listening through the commercials. Yes, sometimes they repeat, but it is the holiday season, and I have no control over the repeaters. But that's how I get paid from them, is by you listening all the way through those commercials and into the show. We're coming back after one more commercial, and then we'll start things off. But as always, thanks very much for listening. Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I think I promised you, as far as a lot of the representations of Word Balloon episodes of years past, that I was going to stick to cartoons. And, I started things off with the Brave and Bold cartoon this weekend with James Tucker and Mike Jelenic talking about the origins of that series. And prior to that, of course, I had Pat Schumacher on at the end of last week talking about the new Harley Quinn cartoon, and Andrea Romano I had on over Thanksgiving week, and that kind of inspired me to do all that. Well, we're going to talk about the Batman Gotham Knight animated anthology, because they were all animated shorts. This came out in 2008, right before The Dark Knight, the sequel to Batman Begins, the second Chris Nolan, Christian Bale movie. But this was the third DC Universe animated original movie release by Warner Premiere and Warner Brothers Animation, and it was released again in 2008. The summer of 2008, and I was involved in a press junket at Wizard World Chicago and got to talk to many of the creative minds behind this fantastic DVD. And really, man, if you go back and look at the stories, they were all pretty amazing. I mean, the first story was called Have I Got a Story for You? And it was written by Josh Olson, the wonderful screenwriter. He even did Star Trek Nemesis. But he wrote that. And then the second story was Crossfire with Greg Rucka. And, man, it definitely infused a lot of the great stuff that Greg created for Gotham Central, as far as the major crimes unit of the Gotham Police and Batman working together. The third story was called Field Test by Jordan Goldberg, another great writer. And that was a neat story. My personal favorite story, well, first of all, then there was In Darkness by David Goyer. And then my personal favorite is Walking Through Pain, a Brian Azzarello story that is so like the essence of Batman, and it's a great, tight little story. I love it. Deadshot was written by Alan Burnett. These were really great stories. And I got to, like I said, be involved in this press junket and sit in roundtables with conversations with Bruce Timm, the great director who led the way with the Batman animated series and continues to be a major force in DC animation. Of course, Greg Rucka, our dear friend, and talking about his story. Our buddy Brian Azzarello as well. Composer Christopher Drake, who really was very interesting, and it was a real education talking to him about how these soundtracks are put together. And then, of course, the great Alan Burnett, who, much like Bruce Timm, was a driving force in DC animation from the animated series on, and such an important, I think, story editor, and continues to be a great influence on the people that are making DC animation today. So it's really fun to look back 11 years ago and where DC animation was. We get really into the minutia of the stories and all these creators' thoughts about Batman. I think you'll enjoy this presentation, and it really makes me want to go back and watch the DVD again because these stories were so good. You know, the Animatrix was on my mind a lot talking to these guys about the shorts that we saw. What can I say? I mean, really, I think that was a big influence on this presentation. I hope they go back to it soon. I like the long movies, but I really do like the shorts. I think the shorts are terrific. And I do know that there are a few new shorts in production. But let's talk about Batman Gotham Knight on today's Word Balloon. All brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you, League, for your support via Patreon. Patreon.com/Word Balloon if you want to subscribe to Word Balloon. I genuinely appreciate it, especially at this time of year. Thank you very much for your support. I'm doing my best to make Word Balloon as interesting and nuanced and every other big adjective that I'm not quite sure of the definition of to tell you how great Word Balloon is. Thanks a lot for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon is also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. Aftershock is having a great December. Issue 4 of Matthew Klickstein's You Are Obsolete drops this week, and Matthew and I had a wonderful conversation about it. But there's been a lot of great Aftershock creators who have shared their stories here at Word Balloon. People like Cullen Bunn and, Tim Seeley and Phil Hester. Hoping to talk soon with Garth Ennis eventually. Adam Glass, great to talk to Adam. And Ted Anderson and so many more. I hope you'll listen to more great conversations here on Word Balloon with Aftershock creators. And I hope you'll check out their website and look at some amazing Aftershock books, genre-bending books for some of your favorite creators out there. Garth Ennis, Marguerite Bennett, like I said, Tim Seeley, Phil Hester, Matthew Klickstein. Really, really good storytellers, great art, beautiful presentation. Go to their website. You'll see for yourself full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes on how to order these books through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. All right, let's get into it now. The press junkets from Gotham Night on Word Balloon.
I should explain the format of the nature of this conversation because really I was part of a press gangbang at Wizard World Chicago. We were hustled into a banquet room where all the writers and various producers were made available to us, and you'll hear a lot of surface noise in the background because they had several press tables, plus people conducting video interviews as well. But they're good conversations, and I think you will enjoy them. But the sound quality, as it's been throughout the convention and stuff, there's a lot of background noise. But again, I think the good conversation does come through. First up, executive producer Bruce Timm, the guy who's been behind all the great versions of the Warner Brother characters through animation that we've enjoyed for the last 15 years or so, from Batman the Animated Series all the way through Justice League Unlimited, and also he's been involved with many of the Warner direct-to-DVD animated films.
So what was it like coming back to Batman? Well, odd. Just the whole nature of this project was such that it wasn't really, my take on Batman or a continuation of my take on Batman. It was the whole thing was set up to deliberately get different viewpoints on Batman. So it was kind of an odd position for me because basically I was hired to not give notes, So that's what I did. I mean, I still had to oversee things and it was really more along the lines of being like a traffic cop, kind of, just in terms of, keeping things kind of consistent, but not. And I was involved early on at the script stage, working with Burnett and the different writers, and then basically I kind of mostly sat out the whole pre-production process, except for giving a few notes here and there, but. I was more involved at the end of the project in post-production, putting it all together. It was an interesting process because we would get character designs and storyboards from the Japanese, and I'd look at them and say, well, okay, now don't do it this way. You need to put a cutaway here, or you need to do a close-up here, and I have to stop myself and say, okay, wait a minute, that's the way I would do it. Stop and just look at it and say, okay, does it work or does it not work? And seriously, there were a couple times where I looked at it and went, I don't think this works, but I'll let it go through and just cross my fingers and hope that it does. And it did. So this was a very unusual project for that.
Were the story segments always going to be in a certain order, or did you, after seeing them, kind of assemble the order?
No, the scripts were laid out in such a way that there was, even though the thread or the through line that connects them all is sometimes very tangential, but no, they pretty much had to be in the order that they are. So yeah, we didn't rearrange anything.
Do you have a favorite segment?
Yeah, I do, but I don't want to say it.
Give them all equally.
Kevin Conroy, how was it to have him back doing the voice of Batman again?
It was great. Well, because, I hadn't seen him in a while, and so, and he's just a great guy, so it's always cool just to have an excuse to bring him out here and, hang out with him for a bit. And, but the thing that surprised me the most was, because he hadn't done the Batman voice in a while, he was a little bit rusty. And and I don't know if because he did his whole performance, in ADR. Unlike the way we normally do it, where we record first and then do the animation. The animation was done first, and then we recorded the voices. So I don't know if he was reacting to what the visuals he was saying or whatever, but yeah, he was a little bit all over the place. He was being a little bit inconsistent, and sometimes he'd say, you know what, that didn't really sound like Batman. You need to be a little bit lower, or a little bit more this, or a little bit more that. So it took a little bit of massaging it at first, but he quickly got the hang of it. The thing that worried us the most about having Kevin for this project is that on one of the segments, the animation team designed Bruce Wayne as looking very, very young. I mean, very young. And we were initially a little bit concerned that he wouldn't be able to get his voice quite in that natural placement for a young Bruce Wayne. But he did. He did great. And that really wasn't a struggle at all. That was a big relief, honestly. But everything else, he just, it's just Kevin doing his Batman thing. And, don't get any better than that. So.
Was it at all odd, though, hearing Kevin's voice coming out of a different character design for Batman?
No, I don't think so, because I know there was some concern about that too, but again, looking back on all the different versions of Batman that we had already done with Kevin, back to the Batman the Animated Series, and then the New Adventures, and then Batman Beyond, and the Justice League, they're all kind of slightly different Batman anyways. So I didn't really think that was going to be, that big of a problem. I don't think it was. So it felt kind of natural to me. So.
On your side of the process, it was you, Andrea Romano, too, as well, for the directing and everything. Was there any difference in terms of this project? Like you said, obviously, recording the voice after the animation came.
That was the biggest obvious difference, and it's really... It's fortunately, it's been a couple months now, so I've kind of put it out of my mind how difficult it was, but it was really difficult. It was the most difficult vocal recording that we've ever done. Partly just because of, we almost rarely had two actors together. Normally we get everybody in the room, as many people as we can, and do it all, pretty much live, like a radio show. And here we were doing it all piece by piece, and it stretched out over like the course of a month. It took us like a month to record the thing, and then, it's a real difficult thing having to match your dialogue to a visual that already pre-exists, and it was tough. I have a newfound respect for people who dub anime for a living, because it's difficult. So.
Were there other name actors or specific voice actors that you wanted to get for this project that immediately or was it just an audition kind of thing of let's see who fits?
Well, we didn't have auditions. We didn't have the luxury of auditions, but as I think is pretty common knowledge, we had initially wanted to use the movie cast. Christian Bale and Michael Caine and Gary Oldman and everybody, but we just couldn't make the schedules work because they're obviously very, very busy actors. And so at that point, it was like, okay, it didn't take us very long to figure out that we wanted to use Kevin as Batman, and then for all the other parts, it was really just just seeing kind of just, as we always do, say, oh, this guy might be good for the part, and let's see if he's available. And
how did David McCallum, for Alfred, how did that come about? Because that's an interesting, just like Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. was for your Alfred.
Andrea had worked with David on another animated project. I'm not sure which show, because she works a lot. Sure. But I don't remember which show that she was working on, where she had brought him in as a day player, and she said he was great. And she mentioned him to me as a possible Alfred, and I said, I love David McCallum. I've been a big fan for years, so that was just, just happened to be, stars were in alignment or something. Cool.
Are you at all concerned with it coming out 10 days before I think when Dark Knight comes out? Are you at all concerned that it's going to overshadow Gotham Knight? Or?
I'm sure that's true to a degree, but on the other hand, it also gives us an opportunity to tie in our PR with the movie to kind of tack it on with it, and so far that seems to be very successful in terms of how many pre-orders we've gotten, and in terms of having special displays at Best Buy and Walmart and things like that. It's certainly given us a big a good tie-in push for that. So I think the pros definitely outweigh the cons. So.
Were there any shorts like The Animatrix was released in terms of would they accompany any films or anything like that, or is it purely DVD release and then?
I don't think there's any plans to release any of them individually, except that I think one of them might be available on demand, but I'm not sure.
So do you like releasing on Blu-ray? New Frontier was the first one that you did on Blu-ray, or was?
Was it? I don't know. I don't even own a Blu-ray player. I know Warner Brothers doesn't want me to say that, but DVD's fine for me. I'm fine with DVD. I really have no opinion about it being on Blu-ray or not. So I'm sure it looks great on Blu-ray. Even better.
So how is your involvement now with the DC Direct stuff different from the series in terms of visually or whatever?
It's different. It kind of in the same way that the Gotham Knight thing was. Is I'm involved, but not to the same extent that I was when I was a showrunner on all the TV series. There's lots of different cooks in the kitchen. I'm not the final say, which I'm okay with. But it's just a different way of working. Again, we're kind of using the direct-to-video movies not as a continuation of the continuity that we had done on TV. So we try to make each one have a unique visual look so that it doesn't, all look exactly the same. So it's not just all my style. So again, we're trying to kind of feel out exactly, how much involvement do I have, and I'm as involved as I can be, or as they want me to be, but it varies from project to project. So,
what's next for you outside of the DC Direct stuff?
That's it for now. Yeah, and that's plenty.
Yeah. Do you ever want to show run again, or no?
Sure. Oh yeah, I'd love to do that again. There's something about the instant gratification of it all when you're doing a show. I mean, it's tougher on one hand because you're working on like 5 episodes at the same time, but especially once you get into the post-production end of it, there's something really, really exciting about a show comes in on Monday, you edit it in a couple days, and like 3 weeks later you got a finished product, and in the meantime you've edited 2 other shows, and it's just bang, bang, bang. There's just something really fun about, the kind of the DIY of it all at that point. But I really enjoy doing the TV stuff.
If you could pick any character or any group of characters to do another series about, Dream Team, what would you want to do a story about?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Because I may end up doing them, and I don't want to jinx it.
Fair enough. Do they come to you and say, what would you like to do next, or is it we would like to do this next?
Sometimes it's both.
Next up, a good conversation with Greg Rucka, one of the men behind Gotham Central, and in this case, he penned the second chapter of the Gotham Knight DVD stories.
So how were you approached to do this?
I was called on the telephone. It was Novak, and it was, I want to say Jonah. And Azzarello and I were on the same call. And they pretty much straight up said, this is what we're doing, this is what we want. The purpose is to link the 2 films and sort of an overall narrative with these segments. And Greg, we'd like you to do Gotham Central, please. And I said, what? And they said, we want you to write an Alan Montoya story, and here's the idea behind it. We have these things and these elements, and would you be interested? And I said, yeah. And that is how it happened. I guess somewhere in development they changed Montoya to Ana Ramirez in the script. So it's Christmas Allen and his partner Ana Ramirez, but it is the script is pretty much what I wrote. The second story. It's called Crossfire, and thematically, it is, you got to remember where the story is placed in the continuity. It's placed right after Batman Begins. So you're seeing changes in the police department. You're seeing that Gordon's been promoted. He's now got a squad of cops that he's picked out. Amongst them is Alan. Alan don't like the fact that the boss is chummy with this freaky vigilante guy that nobody can get a good look at. And he doesn't know who this guy is. And you got to remember, I think we forget because we all know who Batman is. We grew up knowing he was the good guy, right? We never doubt that. Every time there's a story where the cops are after Batman, we always yell at the cops because we know he's a good guy, but they don't. Well, you got to remember, there's no reason for anybody, with maybe the exception of Gordon, to believe that this guy is a good guy. There's nothing in the recent history of Gotham to support it, right? It is not as if Batman held a big press conference at the end of Batman Begins going, see, microwave device? I disarmed that. He didn't do it. They didn't do it. So you're going to have people, I think, quite reasonably being like, look, this guy's going to go bad on it. Maybe he hasn't killed anybody. Maybe he hasn't. Maybe we just haven't found the bodies. And seriously, and maybe it's just a matter of time. So Alan has good reason not to trust this guy that Gordon is 100% behind. And Ramirez, conversely, is able, as a Gothamite, to look and be like, no, you don't understand. I mean, I'm finally not ashamed to wear the badge. That's huge. So against that, they have to transfer a prisoner, the guy that's caught in the first segment, in George's segment. And they have to take him back across the Narrows to Arkham. And since the end it begins, the entire Narrows has sort of been turned into a penal colony. The island is now Arkham. So they got to bring this guy back across. And on the way back, they get caught in a crossfire between two gang factions. And of course, Batman shows up. And saying anything more would tell you how it ends, and I've already told you enough. So there you go.
Were you happy with the voice characterizations?
Yeah, it was weird because we were just talking about this the other press table. This is the first time I've written animation, and I wrote, what I felt I was asked to write. I wrote, two cops primarily talking in a car, partners talking in a car, and there's a cadence to that and a rhythm to that. That I'm not sure carried across to a Japanese director, so it becomes totally different. And that's not a value judgment. It's simply an observation. Tonally, it becomes a different thing. Lines that I wrote expecting, hearing the snap to them in my head, that kind of and that pace are slowed down when the director is, slowing down when the animation is slow. When, the shot is a long shot of the car moving along, things like that. And there's it's not as naturalistic, I guess. I wrote something more naturalistic than I think the director directed it as. So that's an over-analysis. You guys are like, no.
Valuable perspective.
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, it's not a value judgment. It's just, for me, that was sort of an awareness of going, wow, you have no control over these things, unless you're Bruce Timm.
Now, when you're writing something in the middle of a project, have you been have to get to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I was given, it's that game, it's a party game, You have to write a story, you have to use the words bear, geranium, and piston rotary engine. Go. And yeah, I mean, it sounds funny, but I like collaboration. I enjoy that process. That was what 52 was, and as hard as that work was, it was also incredibly rewarding to work on a collaboration at that level. And it's much the same thing here. They said, well, this is the idea, this is the guy, you've got to get him from here to Arkham, and there's a gun involved. And I was like, okay. And the thing is, though, and again, that's what they told me 2 years ago when I got the job. Since then, they changed it up. They changed the story and so on and so forth. The script actually surprised me because it was remarkably similar to the draft I turned in. And again, that's not, that's just a natural process. Stuff gets reworked and redone. But the plot elements changed. They had changed sort of the overarching story in the interim. So the stuff that I was like, well, this has to be there and this happens to be, well, they're there, but they're kind of like, shoved to the side of it because it's not as important to the overall story that they finally did. So. Simple, easy.
Did you find working in Tokyo? Did you find language to be a barrier?
Yeah, I didn't go over. All I did was, and this is the other part of the process. I wrote a screenplay. I sent it to Warner Brothers, to Greg Novick, and he read it and sent it back, and I did a pass, and it got sent in again, and that was it. I didn't speak to, the director. I didn't speak to any of those folks.
But you've seen the finished project?
I have, yeah.
You like how it turned out?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I can always find fault in my own work. Trust me.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can unerringly find a thing that I did badly or wrong. But I think for the most part, it executes. It does what I wanted it to do.
Was it tough containing a story in a 10 to 12 minute?
Actually, no.
Okay.
Actually, no. But I think that for me, I like those constraints. And, I trained short. I mean, if that makes sense. I cut my writing teeth on the short story, and in short form comics and so on. I think that being able to tell a story economically is frankly the trait of a good writer. So being told, well, this can be no more than 15 pages. It's like, okay, that's great. You just told me a frame. I know it's got to end here and it's got to start here and everything else has to be in the middle. If they say, I'll make it as long as you want, then you're like, wow. You can be all over the place. So.
Does it work out a minute a page, just like a regular screenplay?
I know that's the rule of thumb. I didn't actually sit there and time it against the script, so I can't speak to it. But I think the script ultimately was like 13, 14 pages.
Okay.
So, you got to bring Christmas Allen into the world of Batman Begins, The Dark Knight.
He's walking around on screen, man. That's so cool.
Does he show up in... I don't
know if he's in the movie.
Okay. I know he shows up in some of the other segments of Gotham.
Yeah, he actually is, and that was the thing. Chris is consistent throughout. I mean, he shows up in the second one, and I think he shows up in like 4 other ones. And I was like, I made him. And that's pretty cool, man. Because I got, this is going to sound awful, but I kind of got over my Batman, hot pants, 8-9 years ago when comics that I was writing with him coming out, were coming out regularly. The first time I was like, holy man, I wrote stuff that Batman saying it. And now I was like, yeah, of course he says it. I wrote it. I mean, that's what he's supposed to do. But this was very similar to that thing I said it was with Chris, because I was like, okay, that guy didn't exist until 10 years ago when I brought him in to Detective, and to see him move from comics to the screen, that's a first for me. So there's that, and then Kate Beckinsale running around being Carrie Stepkill for Whiteout. I'm pretty happy as far as that goes. I got 2 of these things that popped out of my head, and now there are iterations of them that people are going to be able to see. So,
any Easter egg kind of moments in your dialogue that would be nods to comic fans?
I'm trying to think. Well, yeah. I mean, I honestly think the whole fact that even though they name her Anna Ramirez,
well, sure,
it's Chris and Renee, and that right there is a huge Easter egg, because it's Chris and Renee in a car they're doing the stuff that we never do in Central, right? Because in Gotham Central, writing a conversation between 2 partners as they're driving from point A to point B is a really boring series of pages that Michael Lark would have killed you if you told him to draw. You can do it on TV, and you can do it in animation, and you can't do it on a comic book page. It's dull. So that was kind of cool. I'm trying to think if there's some of this in particular. And I don't think I went in heavy. I think it was just light touch. I think there's a reference to Chris coming in from Metropolis, which is in keeping with the characters established in comics. Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's not a whole lot. No, I could be wrong. Ask me again after we see it.
I remember a couple of years ago talking to Brubaker, and he said there was a time that the WB was interested in developing
Gotham Central comes around time and time again. I have had so many people tell me, Novak tells me, the last time I saw him, and he says it always happens. Somebody thinks they've discovered it, and then they come in like they're the first one, say, this would be a great TV series, and he always goes, good luck. Really? Yeah.
What's the barrier, you think?
Batman.
Oh, it's waiting for Godot and he never shows up?
No, I don't know. The barrier is...
Oh, the office won't let it...
Batman, and upstairs, Warner Brothers just... No, you don't.
Wow.
No, you don't. And I think, for better or for worse, Birds of Prey was the chance they gave it, and Birds of Prey didn't go. It is. It's But by the same token, Smallville got under the wire. So, eventually I think somebody's going to sneak it in at the right place at the right time. At which point I will show up on their doorstep and say, "You're not doing the show without me." And it's as simple as that.
Well, they'd be fools to try it.
I got to tell you, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that you could sell a TV show on the CW called Gotham Central that had a core cast of 6 hot, late 20-somethings, ethnically diverse, who wear badges and guns, kick in doors, in a city where there's a bat signal, and you don't have to see Batman. I would think you could do that. Now, I also think that, quality will out, and the market has proven me wrong time and again. So, clearly, I don't know. But, you got to protect the golden goose, and right now Batman is a great big golden goose, and I don't begrudge them that. Right. But it does seem to me a little silly that if there was ever an idea, I think that Ed and I, each of us separately had created that said, it would make a good TV show. This was it. In fact, and I would go on to say, because there's an idea that had been done before, minus the Gotham element. It was called Hill Street Blues, and Homicide Life on the Street, and NYPD Blue. I mean, it's not like it's an idea that doesn't have legs.
Right.
So,
the hardbacks are coming out for Gotham?
Yeah. First one comes out mid-September. I believe it covers issues 1 through 10. Introduction is by Lawrence Block. They're reusing the original introduction.
Cool.
Second volume in hardcover, I believe, will be 11 through 20. Introduction by Dwayne Swazinski. Yeah, really cool. And I'm hoping that Michael will be able to get in some of the supplemental stuff, and maybe we'll get some art corrects and so on. I don't know. We'll see. Thank you guys.
Thanks, man.
I hope you like it.
The next section is a discussion with another comic book writer, Brian Azzarello, who, in my opinion, wrote the best story of the crop.
Greg Novak. Yeah, he contacted me. It was a week before I was going to Europe, and asked me if I was interested in doing this. I said, sure, and he said, well, I'm going to need it in 2 weeks. So I had a nice hotel in Barcelona. I can't tell you much about the city itself. The room was okay.
So why working through pain?
Because I was interested in telling something about the process of learning how to be Batman. That was my concern. I really didn't have much interest in writing a story about Batman himself, but writing about Bruce Wayne was something that I wanted to do. And it's hard because, you guys want these animated movies to be all like superheroes jumping around, and I wanted to do Bruce Wayne, like learning.
Does that stem from your Lex Luthor miniseries as well? And that vibe of the character. Are we going to see that in this film? And it's earlier in the process, but
no, he's more in this. I've envisioned Bruce going through many different sort of disciplines, like as far as martial arts and medicine and just stuff that he would need to know to be Batman. So he's travels the world. Learning different sort of techniques.
How would you describe Bruce Wayne psychologically?
Really fucked up. It's that simple. Bruce Wayne is somebody who has not gone beyond a certain event in his life. He has done everything that he possibly can to stay at a certain point in his life. He took over his father's business. He lives in his father's house. So he surrounds himself with reminders of his past. He won't let it go. That's the long version of the short version answer.
What can you tell us about the director of your short?
You mean the animation house?
Yes.
Nothing.
No?
Really?
Like what you saw, obviously?
Oh, yeah, I love it. Yeah. I love the way it turned out. It's really, really... It's cool. It's one of the... it's really unique, I think, and the whole scope of the piece itself.
Was it tough writing? How long is it? 9 or 10 minutes, I'm assuming.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, was it tough writing? To encapsulate a story in that short of a period of time. Was it okay? Or?
Yeah, it was okay. Considering I had 2 weeks, it was. Thank God it was only 12 minutes.
How close were you? You only had a 2-week window. How close were you to day 14?
I hit it, man. It's a deadline. You hit your deadline.
Was it pretty grueling at that point? Stuck in the room in Barcelona, or
was it grueling?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. Well, it was difficult because I'm in Barcelona,
Yeah.
Right. And the last thing I want to do is be.
Yeah, Barcelona and Batman don't go well together.
No, they don't.
So no training in Barcelona for the becoming Batman?
Oh, he would have been gored by a bull if I would have put him there.
So you said that this bit has him going through the different disciplines that he needed to becoming Batman.
Well, it focuses on, it touches on one and it focuses on one more.
Okay.
But I think what we've applied in the piece is that he's doing this a lot. He's doing a lot of traveling, learning different sort of disciplines, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
This one he goes to India to learn how to manage pain from a fakir.
Would you like to do more animation? Was this fun?
Yeah, it was a good time. Would I like to do some more? Sure. If the right project presents itself, yeah, I'd like to. It's an interesting way to work. It was pretty gratifying seeing it when it was all done.
Did much change from your script to the final?
No.
Excellent.
No, and I turned that script in, and I figure, God, I'm waiting for the rewrites to come.
Yeah.
None.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you have much contact with the animation house after you submitted the script?
No. Didn't need to.
No.
But I like working that way anyway. It's like, let me do my part, and then it's your turn. I told you this would be quick. That's it, huh?
Well, just one final question. You did Broken City, you've done this movie. Any desire to write more Batman stories?
Yeah, I have a few more left in me. Sure.
What's your next? You've got something with Bermejo coming up, and what?
The Joker.
Right.
It's a graphic novel. That'll be out in October. Lee Bermejo, the person I did Luther with, Batman Deathblow, yeah. We've worked a number of times together. This is like his greatest work, and it's so bleak and dark and just dirty, and I read it a few weeks ago for the first time doing the corrections because you get the art in dribs and drabs and that kind of stuff, and then it gets lettered, and so I never really sat down with the thing until a few weeks ago. The whole thing done. And I read it, and I was like, oh my God, this is just, the Joker is so screwed up. It's just relentless.
And it's no worries about how far you could go with the
I hope not. I don't know. So far, so good. We'll see. They got Joker's toys to sell now, so.
That's a great image. That one image, preview image that's been released.
The cover?
Yeah, him coming out of Arkham or whatever.
Oh, no. The cover's just his face.
Oh, okay.
The one coming out of Arkham.
Yeah.
Looks great. That's a money shot. Yeah. All right. We're good. As far as I'm concerned, yeah.
Next up, one of the composers of Gotham Knight, Christopher Drake, who along with Robert Krall and Kevin Manthe were the composers of the various segments, but real interesting stuff, and especially when you consider these days that despite the full orchestration sound you get on many of these music soundtracks, it's all done by synthesizer, so really Chris not only composed the music, but he also performed the music in his various segments.
Have you seen the finished product yet?
I have, and it's pretty amazing. It's like Batman as no one has ever seen in an animated form. I mean, it's so great because it's so all over the place. I mean, as far visually, it's 6 completely different, visually and musically, different takes on the character, and it's just fantastic. I was blown away by the stuff. The animation on the 2 segments I did was Have I Got a Story for You, written by Josh Olson, and In Darkness Dwells, written by Goyer. And between those two, they're 2 completely different, visually and musically, things, both amazing. What's really beautiful about the animation, and this one, the Japanese animation, is a lot of times, I don't know if it's an American animation thing, but you either get really high quality, and I'm not an animator, so you have to bear with me. This is just my layman's, terminology of animation. But you either get like really quality fluid animation, but you get kind of stock backgrounds that get reused. Every shot is like composed, and there's nothing reused. It's just the backgrounds are beautiful. All the little details, artwork, in everything. I mean, it's just amazing. There's this one scene that I love, without bringing the story for anybody, in Have I Got a Story for You, where the bad guy is I guess they're on top of like some kind of Gotham City high-rise, and it's a robbery, and he blows the door open, and there's a shot of him standing in the door, and the art that they did, there's like lions sculpted, there's so much detail in just this one shot, which for anything else would be a throwaway shot, just be like, all right, dude melted the door. But every shot has just, you'll be pausing it and just, it's amazing. It's breathtaking.
So you said that both of the pieces are very different musically.
Yeah.
Did you try to do any sort of recurring themes?
Yeah,
over the 2 pieces.
Yeah. To answer your question, no. Because that was my first question when I got the call to do this was, okay, are we tying into the Zimmer thing, or is this because it's like supposed to be from the producers of Batman Begins, all that stuff? So is this an in between? Is there any thematic? And I was just telling these other guys, I'm the kind of guy where I like continuity. I always hated that, like the music from Star Trek 2 and 3, they had a different score from Star Trek 4. It's like, where was the theme? Or like, where was Jerry Goldsmith's theme? It's like, I like to have continuity through stuff. And so, for instance, for In Darkness Dwells, which was a piece written by Goyer, who did, obviously, the Dark Knight and Batman Begins, I wanted to write my own theme, but again, kind of tap into, like, for instance, the synth stuff and process percussion that Zimmer did, but have it still be my own. But if you're a fan, maybe kind of a subliminal Elseworlds, if you will, because that's what really they all are. They're all kind of parallel universes, all these stories, and that's how we treated them. And so that's just kind of like a cool, like, fanboy, shout out I have, in the music, to the Goyer stuff. And I did write, that was my Batman theme. And it's funny because, again, we're talking about each episode was its own kind of parallel universe. I had written, sounds weird, a 2-note theme for In Darkness Dwells, based on the syllables Batman, 2 syllables done. So Bruce loved that so much because there's an opening shot. It looks like Blade Runner in that Darkness Dwells. It's just fantastic. It was a dream come true to score, for me to score, because I'm such a huge Batman fan. But it was so beautiful and so dynamic. I wrote this big sweeping theme, and Bruce called me up right away. I emailed it to him, and I know it was good because Bruce said that was bitchin'. I'm like, okay, so. It was so bitchin' that Bruce wanted it to be the actual main title intro music. That was great, but I told Bruce, because there's 3 different composers, and I just happened to have the luck of the draw because I did the first story that I did the main intro titles. I feel that, for most movies, it's only one composer, and the composer writes the theme that the whole rest of the movie and the characters, it sets the tone. But I felt that this isn't my movie because I got Kevin and Rob. So, and I said also I'd written this 2-note theme for In Darkness Dwells, and I just kind of wanted to keep it. That's that parallel universe, Batman's world, and that's his theme that only exists there. And Bruce thought about it, and he said, you know what, maybe, and also that music goes from 0 to 200 miles an hour in 50 seconds, and there's a part where Batman jumps off a building. It's just huge, it's this giant choir. And Bruce said, maybe we don't want to do that. Maybe we just want to evoke a gothic mood in spirits, as opposed to creating a definitive thematic statement. You know what I mean? So that was the hardest part for me, because it was like I wanted to hold back and not like a Batman theme, but just kind of evoke, the dark gothic spirit of Batman without, making a definitive statement. So that was the only thing, as far as themes, when you ask about were you asked to create themes. And the three of us, we were all sequestered. There was no cross-pollination of musical ideas. We were left to our own. That was the whole point. The music be as unique to each story as the visual, the art was.
Did you? I mean, you've seen the final product.
Yeah.
So did you find that any of the three of you unconsciously, without talking, had anything
Absolutely.
that you pulled together?
Well, here's the thing. Especially, I think Rob obviously did the music for Angel, so he knows about darkness, and and I did the music for Hellboy, and I know monsters, so we kind of come from a familiar place. What's interesting is Kevin's got such a unique voice he's got this interesting production sound design aspect where he really makes loops and noises, and I'm not even talking beyond musical stuff. Well, it is musical, but it's just this great, for one of the sequences he did, it's just so out there. There's stuff bouncing around if you have a surround sound, just feedbacks and internal stuff. So Kevin, as I was telling these other guys, really the music needs to fit the story, whatever the story needs. And I noticed that Kevin's story, he has one that's based in India. I think it's probably the most beautiful looking in story out of all six of them. But Kevin wrote this all ethnic score using ethnic Indian instruments, which is beautiful. And then his other story was kind of a little bit, again, he did this avant-garde stuff. Rob and I both had more Batman stories, and I think we kind of tapped into Batman's. Batman's Batman. If you think you're not going to think of bright music with Batman. So we all kind of come from a minor chord. It all starts with a minor chord. Batman's a minor chord character. So I think even though Rob's and I wrote completely different music, judge for yourselves. At the end titles, that's the first time we all heard our music. There's a medley of the three of us, three pieces. So the first one is Rob's. Then it segues almost perfectly, like we meant to do it this way, with holding on to note into mine, where you hear this big choir, and then mine stops and goes into Kevin's with the ethnic Indian stuff. So it was really amazing on that level that we were all left to our own, but it was which is the whole point, the whole parallel universe Batman theme. It all sounds like it's interconnected, much like the visual style and storytelling, the point of the movie, but it's all unique as well. Is that kind of a non-answer? It's
actually
unique?
No, it's
the same and unique?
No, it's exactly what I was looking for.
It's cool how all of you who have scored these direct-to-video animated projects have given it that big screen feel.
Yeah.
So you do treat them like than you would a feature film.
Absolutely.
Because it elevates the product.
Absolutely. And I just want, again, I just want it to be it's Batman, and I want this to be, as a fan, I look at it as a fan, and I just want, it's got to be huge, big choir and stuff, and I really, you know what, when I'm dealing with something like Batman, I really want to try, and at some point, which for me, In Darkness Dwells has my hi-ho silver moment. And what I mean by that is, when you hear the William Tell overture and the Lone Ranger does a wheelie on Silver, he shoots his gun. I remember seeing that as a kid, and I'd get a shiver down my spine. And there's a part in the intro of In Darkness Dwells where Batman rises up as a silhouette with the bat signal behind him and jumps off the building, and the score goes fucking nuts, and I have a choir, and I just want people to be like, I want to see the goat. I get the goat. If I do the goat tonight, then I'll be like, I win. Goat wins.
Very cool.
So do you have an inspiration?
As a kid, man, I grew up on Jerry Goldsmith albums and John Williams, of course, and all the masters, Bernard Herrmann, all that stuff. It's interesting because Batman has a pretty big legacy as far as music, Shirley, it's a great regret of mine that I never got to meet Shirley Walker, because she was such a huge influence on me. And, I mean, when I saw Batman the Animated Series, I was blown away on so many levels, but even the music, man, it was the most amazing and exciting thing I heard on television at the time. So, I mean, all these things kind of, I wear them on my sleeve. You listen to it, you listen to my music, I'm sure, there's parts where you go, oh, yeah, it's Jerry Goldsmith's Superfan coming out, I can hear it sometimes, on my stuff. It's like, oh, that's a little bit too close, and you pull back. But I think we all do. I think we all, all of us that are composers, it doesn't come from a vacuum. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's a little daunting, though, because, again, it's Batman, and it's like, you've got Danny, you've got Shirley, now you got Hans Zimmer, and you got James Newton Howard, and it's like, when they were first, going back to your question, when you're asking about themes, I was like, well, shit, where do I go? Because Zimmer kind of went there. Like, if you're going to do something different, okay, what's the opposite of what Shirley and Danny did? Shirley and Danny kind of had like this, or I should say, Danny really had this kind of Bernard Herrmann meets Carl Stalling, really busy, kind of a thing. So what does Zimmer do? He does the opposite. He pulls it back, just neutral, minimalistic synth, and it's like, okay, well, that's done. Now where the hell do I go? How many there's only so many minor chords. I need H minor. I need a new minor chord. So, I thought, okay, well, I will bring what I do, which is very inspired by, Shirley and Danny and Hans, and kind of do my own thing and filter it all through, and have it be its own animal. And I'm really happy. I'm really happy with both of them. But as far as we're talking just about a Batman theme, Darkness Dwells, I'm really happy with that. Because the first one, Have I Got a Story for You, there isn't really room for it because it's different kids' interpretation. I try to write little mini themes, but they're like bizarro, Elseworld versions of the kids' POV, versions of Batman. So there isn't a definitive theme for that. It would just be inappropriate. So, yeah.
Is it mostly synth, or
it's all synth.
It's all synth.
It's all 100% synth. There just unfortunately is not the budget or the time right now. That's the thing is, I think people. I get hired because obviously my writing, but also I take great pains to make my stuff sound like, is it real or is it Memorex? Is that orchestra or not? And really try to fool people, which is more trouble than it's worth sometimes. I wish they'd just let us hire a damn orchestra. There just is not the budget for that. Sometimes you hire like a solo instrument to play over it. There's just certain things, the imperfections of a human player. When you're using computers can be too perfect. That's one of my tricks. I actually go in and slop up some of the writing because if it's quantized, it sounds too perfect. It sounds artificial. So you have to put those little human imperfections in there. But it's all me, keyboard, even the percussion. The only part that has and it's still electric instruments, is I'm playing guitar at the beginning of Have I Got a Story for You. It's all punk rock and drums and, like kid stuff. But that's the only stuff where I'm actually, outside of doing this, I'm actually, playing guitar.
What software do you use to mix your scores?
It's all, I use what's called Digital Performer, which is a sequencer. And I guess the best way to describe that to a layperson is, you can kind of think of, it records not how can I say this without being really confusing? It records basically the information of how I'm playing, almost like a player piano. And then it plays back. I have a whole studio filled with computers that play back samples of violins, percussion, horns, all that stuff. But it's, what it's almost like? Think of it like stop motion animation with music, one note at a time, and then stop, record. My family hates it. Like they've listened to the music like 2 billion times by the time I'm done. My son has it. My son's always the barometer. He's 12. I bring him in. Is this cool or does this suck? He's like, no, the goat. Like, okay, cool. All comes down to the goats.
I work in commercial production. That's why I was wondering about.
Yeah. Well, and then from there it gets recorded in there, and then it goes into Pro Tools.
Okay.
And then it gets mixed on the dub stage. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you my goofy, because I'm such a fan of Bruce. This is my Bruce Timm story. It's like, you guys remember the Chris Farley show from Saturday Night Live? I would be sitting on the dub stage. Poor Bruce. I'm like on the dub stage. We're watching this movie, Lils, and Bruce is like having a donut, or whatever. And I'd be like, dude, remember that part in like Beware the Grey Ghost? Like the bad guy was you. Like Adam West was in it. Yes, Chris. That was so awesome. Just like that would go on, and I'd ask questions. What was Roddy McDowell like? It's just amazing stuff. So, dream come true.
Very cool. Very good. Good work on Hellboy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are you on the sequel?
That's another story that I can't tell you. Turn that off. But I'm involved. Yeah, I'm involved in some Hellboy stuff.
Is that your next project?
My next project. I can tell you that I'm doing the next DC Direct video. I think everybody knows what it is.
Yeah, we were talking about it first, so yeah.
Oh yeah, so I'm on board with that. Yeah, cool. And that's going to be. I don't know how much I can talk about the direction, but it's going to be different. Actually, different than Batman. It's going to be a huge score. Female choir to get the feminine femaleness of that female DC Direct thing that I'm doing next. I'm really excited, and that's another thing. Like you go, oh, okay, and then I just saw the animatic of it. I was like, holy shit! Does anybody have any preconceived notion of what this is going to be? They don't. This is some hardcore violent. Maybe. I don't know how we're going to get a PG-13 on this right now, but we'll see. But I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. That's all I will say. I've already probably dug a hole. I'm going to shut the hell up.
We're going to finish things up with Alan Burnett, who you might remember as one of the screenwriters of the various Bruce Timm produced Warner Brother animated series. He worked on Batman. He worked on Justice League, known in particular for his work on Batman, the animated series, on the Two-Face episodes. And then we finish things up with Josh Olson, Academy Award-nominated screenwriter for History of Violence, who does the first piece in the Gotham Knight story, Have I Got a Story for You?
I was brought on this actually as it was happening. They had everything all pretty much laid out, DC did, and whoever was involved in it beforehand. And so I was brought on as things were almost already written except for one episode, which was the Deadshot episode, or what turned out to be the Deadshot episode. They didn't know what villain they were going to use for that thing or what the story was going to be. So that's how I got involved at the last minute on this thing. And I was really happy because I like the idea of shorts. It's a bit like writing a comic book, like just like a one-shot comic. So. And then I did a little bit of threading throughout the whole thing, but not much because I sort of thought that the strength of it was that there are 6 different people writing 6 different things, and there are 6 different directors, 6 different visions. So I thought actually the strength of it was that they all be a little bit different, and they sort of mesh together. And so that's how I got involved with it. It was the right time. It was one of those timing things which worked out pretty well.
How different was the process from when working on the various series?
It wasn't all that much different. It was actually, the one wonderful thing about it was that I could write for an older audience on this. So Deadshot, who we've never been able to use for television shows because of bullets and guns, and we could use him. So that's how that came about. And he was a good villain. I mean, I enjoyed writing him. And there's a lot of eye candy in my section, and I have yet to see the whole thing put together. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I've seen a little bit of everyone, and a lot of like the first one, which looked good, and the one right before me, Azzarello's one I've seen, and they're both and all the animation is different, even though it's all anime, it's all different, and it's nice. I mean, because anime brings another sense of darkness to the whole background of Batman.
For a lengthy piece, and this isn't a lengthy piece, but like things like Heavy Metal, the different animations seemed to work, and it seemed to kind of make it easier to adjust as a viewer to each kind of form of animation. And maybe some things that are really full length, over 90 minutes, might get boring and stuff. I know this isn't the case in this.
Yeah, have you guys seen it yet?
Not yet. No, not yet. We're going to see it after everybody else.
Yeah. So
they hit it up on the preview site, the Warner preview site. Watch parts of it.
It's a lot of fun. It's an interesting experiment. And I think that I like to see them do another one because I think why not? I mean, it really stretches Batman. It really stretches the art form. So I hope they do another one.
Were you given any direction, like you need to get from this point before the Dark Knight, or you just told them just do whatever you think you can in the movie?
I don't even remember being told anything specifically. There's a progression to it, the whole 6 episodes, in that in the beginning the cops are still wary of him, and by the end they're secretly working with him. And all 6 episodes are supposed to take place between Batman, I'm sure you know this, Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. So, so consequently, you don't see any Batcave in this one because their Batcave's been destroyed. So, although I didn't realize that at first. So there was a Batcave in mine, but now it's sort of like that secret room in Wayne Tech or Wayne Industries that they use. So that worked out too. I didn't realize that. I forgot that the Batcave was destroyed. I still can't believe it's destroyed, but it's gone. What are we going to do? Has anybody seen the movie? Has anybody is there been a
Advance of the Dark Knight?
Yeah.
Not yet.
I'm hoping to see it this weekend. I thought it's done in Chicago. Why not have it premiere?
Well, that's I guess the point of the DVD. Doing the cartoon like this.
There's rumors online that they were going to do a surprise thing for the people involved with the viral marketing. I haven't heard anything from
all I've heard is it's going to premiere in New York, about 2 weeks or something?
I think it actually premieres tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, like the junket was the 27th in LA. I might be wrong, don't quote me.
Don't quote you.
Don't quote you. But
have you heard anything? Okay.
Did you look at any previous comic arcs of Deadshot for any thoughts on your?
Yeah, a little bit, but I have 11 minutes to write a story, so I couldn't get too deep into it. But I did look back at some Deadshot stuff, and so if I just played him as an assassin who enjoys his work, and he's a bit of a coward because he does it from a distance. You don't really realize this in the end until he has to confront Batman and realize this guy is a little bit of a coward. And there are a lot of bullets in it. There are actually more bullets in it than I originally wrote. But the Japanese had fun with the bullets, let me tell you.
Yeah, we were asking Azzarello before. Was much changed from your script to,
There were changes made, yeah. But we all worked together, I mean, sure, and as I say, there's a lot of eye candy. I mean, there's some scenes where going, oh my goodness.
Did the decision to use Deadshot come from you, or how much of that was outside?
It came from me.
Okay.
And I think I was having a meeting with the DC people, with Gregory Novak, and we were just discussing what villain should we use, and we couldn't use the Joker because they're using the Joker. And, there's a lot of people you can't use because they've done them already, and they have plans for them to further from the next thing. And suddenly I thought Deadshot, and everybody said, yeah, that's it. Let's go with that. And that was about as long as the conversation was.
Did it at all help that Deadshot's, he's essentially a normal guy, which, fits into the slightly more realistic tone that we've got with Batman Begins.
Yeah,
Dark
that
Knight.
helped. Yeah, because Clayface you have to explain, and some of the others you have to really explain. I mean, I was thinking one of the villains which I was interested in was Ventriloquist. I always liked Ventriloquist. I like split personalities a lot. They're instant stories for me. They're split personalities. But Deadshot was like, that's it. That's exactly it. So I did my 11 minutes on Deadshot.
Will we see any other Periphery regulars in your story?
In my story, you'll see Alfred, and you'll see Commissioner Gordon, and I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. There's two policemen who you'll see. I'm not sure that they're running characters that we've had in the past. I think they may come out of the movie. I'm not sure. Okay. But yeah. And they appear in other episodes too, so that's why I brought them.
Okay.
So, that's...
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
And any other questions you have, I'll be fine to answer it too. So, can I ask something? Where are you guys from? What are you reporting for?
Detroit, and I'm a freelance journalist that writes for a couple different sites. Great comics of film, small magazines in Detroit.
Okay.
I'm from Pennsylvania, do a podcast called Comic Geek Speak.
Okay, very good.
We're from Columbus, Ohio. We write for MovieWeb, the superhero flick site.
Okay. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh.
So
I'm based here in Chicago, and I have a podcast called Word Balloon that I post on my own, but also gets posted in Newsarama.
Oh, very good, very good.
We'll have a writer reviewing the film for Newsarama as well later on.
Very good. Good.
See, I get to do double duty. I get to do the interviews and get to go review the film after.
Well, I'll be there too. Nice work on all the animated series. Well, thank you. Honestly, it was definitive take on the character, and it's
Yeah, we had a good time with it. Yeah. That was a golden time. That was the time when all the biorhythms hit high. You had a network that wanted something special, and you had Warner Brothers that wanted to build on the Tim Burton movie, and you had all these geeks that I worked with, including myself, who wanted to do serious Batman, and it all worked out. We ended up with an audience that was like 9 to 14-year-olds instead of usual 6 to 11.
Yep.
So,
will you be involved in any of the future direct-to-video?
yeah, I'm working on one right now.
Okay.
I finished up right now, but I can't tell you because they're
I understand. Yeah. Have you had enough of that one? Do you need a little more?
They had
We're cool. Meet John Olson, the writer of segment 1 of this that you'll see later on, called I Got a Story for You. He'll tell you all about it. Really, really cool tale. Also the Academy Award nominated writer of The History of Violence. Thank you.
Good to see you.
See you.
All right. Excellent.
So, when did you start doing this for a living?
Is anyone truly doing this?
Anyone's living off of this, so that's moving
close to it. But cool.
What about you? Tired of answering questions, I want to ask a few.
I have questions. Without spoiling, what can you tell us about your...
Batman is Bruce Wayne. That's the big reveal. I just want you to jump on it. What do I know? I'm a huge Batman fan. I'm a big comic book guy my whole life. I just bought my first house and moved into it in the last 3 weeks. This is how excited I am about it. I have a closet that holds my entire comic book collection, and there's room to keep it up for another 10 years. So that's wow. That's how valid I am. I mean, like Keith Kelly, no, I got it's got a massive collection. But so I've always been a fan, and it's funny because I hadn't normally as a writer gone into comic book related stuff, and a weird thing happened. Because History of Violence was based on a graphic novel, but it's not, people think comics, that's not what they think, and it wasn't, I got kind of sick of doing these, what's it like adapting a comic book? It's like any other thing, and then when you see the film, you don't immediately go, oh, it's based on a comic book, whereas with Batman, you go, oh, it's tight pants, but I had done some stuff, I know Greg Novick through history,
Somebody, but he didn't. I can't quite specifics because it was a while back. But I got approached by somebody, it may have been through Greg's office, asking if I was interested in doing the thing. They laid out the project, and I remember only because I can still hear my agent screaming in my ears because it was very shortly after I'd been nominated for an Oscar, which I'm sure you can imagine sort of raises your profile, and they're now coming to you, which is a great thing. And I had just turned down, and I guess if I remember what it was, I shouldn't even tell you, but I can't remember that, but I just turned down some huge studio project for, ungodly sums of money. And the next day, this call came, and I said, yes, absolutely. And my agent's going, what are you doing? And I'm like, that's Batman, man. It's fucking Batman. So it was a no-brainer. And I love the idea. It wasn't just a Batman cartoon. It was this notion of bringing in these different perspectives and the Japanese anime directors. And I'm not a giant, and I don't mean this to come out like I'm saying, but I'm not versed in anime that much. I'm aware of it, probably more than most because I'm at conventions. But I just like the idea of having a different perspective of sort of different artists and different countries kind of coming in and looking at it. And I thought it'd be an interesting mix. And so I just jumped all over it, and it was just a pleasure. I got to just really play with toys I'd always wanted to play with, and I was so knocked out when I saw the finished product. I'm still trying to track that because my director is doesn't speak English, and obviously they're not here, and I sort of tried to get in touch with the guy just to tell him how beautiful I thought the thing was, because he did such an amazing job sort of filling in. I tried to write it, I tried to do my job, which was write the story and flesh out the characters and the structure and every other thing, but leave him as much room as possible to do what he does. And, there must be 3 or 4 places in the script where I wrote just the animators go nuts. And describe just as much as you need to get the story across, but leave him room to have fun, which works out great for me because he's doing what he does best. And it's also a way of if you give him enough room to play, then you leave your stuff alone. Right? It's, directors have to be herded, but so I was so charmed by it when I saw it. I was telling those guys over there, I've only been fortunate enough to have good experiences, but I've had some smaller films made that are just atrocious, where you just sit there going, oh. And by the time I saw the first cut of History of Violence, I was so involved in it. I mean, that's, I did not spend as much time on this as I did now, obviously, but I spent a lot of time with it, I spent a lot of time with Cronenberg, I spent a lot of time on the set, so there weren't surprises, and I think that's the thing, is that when you write this stuff, you write anything, I think, or draw, or get any kind of art, there's that secret thing inside you that wants to someday be able to sit down and see it like you've never seen it before, never heard of it, and you never get that. Because I remember watching History of Violence the first time and going, surprised, because I knew they pulled it off, but I knew what was coming. It wasn't new to you. Yeah, there's nothing new to me, and I've talked to other people about that experience who've done really great films, and you go, yeah, it's, the best you can say is, yeah, they didn't fuck that up. But this combination of time had gone by, I had seen nothing of it, and there was such a unique perspective being brought to it. When I saw the cartoon, I was just knocked out. It was as close as I may ever come to having that experience of seeing something I wrote as though I'd never heard of it before. And I just loved it. All my friends have had to sit through it about 8 different times now, and I just got to meet Chris Drake, who did the score, which is just ridiculously good. And I was thrilled that they said, can you take time out of your busy Hollywood schedule to promote? I said, yes, absolutely. I'll do anything for this thing. I love it. So,
were there any previous writers that you can think of, comic book or otherwise, that influenced your take on Batman? Or?
There's I got more info on it from a guy over there. Actually, I sort of wrote this thing that is now slowly becoming a genre, because there's at least 3, if not 4 stories like it now. But late 60s, early 70s, Denny O'Neil wrote a thing as a backup in Detective Comics. And you seem to know it. And I don't know,
tell the story.
Yeah, it's 3 kids sitting on a campfire talking about Batman. And he just said Irv Novick, but I also was either Denny O'Neil or Jim Aparo who had drawn it. I've been sort of trying to find it for the last couple of months because I wanted to get it right, and I've just been too busy. But Denny O'Neil's here apparently today. I want to ask him, because I'm telling you who drew it, and I know he wrote it. And it was a great story, each of them describing what Batman was, and I know that's not what he is.
And they did an episode of the animated
series. Yeah, and I read something online saying, well, Josh Olson is obviously based on that. And I was like, I'm not 12. Before that. And there's another one apparently as well on, I think, one of the other animated series or something that was sort of a different. So there's now enough that if you do it, you're no longer a thief. You're now just trade to a genre, or a subgenre. But if you're going to steal that stuff, you have to bring something to it that's, I love the animated series one. It's actually going to be the DVD.
That's going to be one of the included episodes?
You see the different aspects of Batman. And, they do the Frank Miller version, the 60s TV version, which is wonderful. And they take the cheap shot of Joel Schumacher, which I'm all for. The thing I brought to it was that I had each of the kids see a different chapter in the same episode, if you will. It's Batman fighting this one villain, and one kid sort of sees it at the beginning, one kid comes along in the middle, another kid comes along in the next chapter, and then you wrap it up at the end. And I thought because I love this sort of like clever, wise-ass shit, because Chris Nolan's directed the films, I had the kids tell the stories backwards, a la Memento, which about a third of the people who see catch the first time. I mean, it's subtle, but you realize as you're watching, wait a minute, this is backwards. And there's a lot of in-jokes in it. About a third of them you'll get if you're a Batman fan, and 2/3 of them you'll get if you've known me intimately for a decade. But that's the fun. Although one thing I regret, and I almost do this, I forgot. I named one of the buildings Aparo Towers because everyone's always giving homage to all the regular guys. I'm like, man, I loved his work. Aparo Towers is great. I read Brave and the Bold religiously, and that guy just. I was talking to Len Weiner a while ago. That guy just cranked pages out. He's just one of those guys who just go boom, boom, boom. They were beautiful. And I realized I didn't actually. It's the thing with screenwriting that do it as long as you want. You always miss this. You have to have characters say it. It's not enough to go exterior Aparo Towers day. But there's a scene where the bad guy makes his first appearance, thus his last appearance at the end of the thing. That on top of this big building, and that's supposed to be the Aparo Towers. But it was a lot of fun. I'm a fan at heart. It was just a chance to just sort of like get to play with these toys, and before they took them away from me. It was lots of fun.
Would you ever have time or interest to do a comic book story?
Yeah, no, I actually I did a comic for Slave Labor Graphics years and years and years ago that nobody read. Nobody heard of. We got a couple of nice reviews. It was a friend of mine who was the artist, and we started doing it on the side. And it was called Jet Comics, and it was a knockoff of kind of early Spider-Man with Green Lantern and stuff like that. And I like to think ahead of the time. It was a kind of sort of fresh, kind of fun, going back to that kind of like early 60s kind of style, but it was sort of before anyone else was doing that. And if you're going to make a go of it, you have to be serious. I mean, we were dilettantes. We were not prepared to start traveling around and do all the work to prepare the thing. I was off writing features. He was a storyboard artist. And I think if we'd spent a little more time working on it, it would have been good. And I love Slave Labor, and Dan Vanner, who ran the company, is wonderful, but it drove me nuts that the only ad I ever saw for Jet Comics #1 was on the back of Jet Comics #1.
Yeah.
But it's tough, because you learn about all this stuff. I mean, you got one paragraph in Wizard and a little blurb, and I don't know who the hell I was then, or my artist, and it was like, here's two idiots you've never heard of with this comic, and you have, it's like, it's a tough ride. I'd love to go back to it. I mean, it's something I've kicked around before.
Have you talked to the DC guys about it?
A little bit, but nothing too serious. It's just, man, I could never do a series. That's so much work. But I thought about it. I've got a Batman graphic novel idea that I've been kicking around for a long time. It's something that no one's ever done. And, which often means there's a reason they've never done it, It's, so I mean, it would be fun. I love playing in the sandbox, and I would love to come back to it.
So what's the next thing that you're working on?
I'm about to hand in.
Talk about.
Yeah, no. I'm about to hand in. I just wrote a real departure because history is very indicative of the kind of stuff I love writing. But I have nieces and a nephew who are young, who are always complaining that they don't get to see Uncle Josh's movies, and I loved these books as a kid. I pitched to Warner and sold, and I'm about to finish, God help me, a sequel to Wizard of Oz. Very, very fun. Where I'm trying to be faithful to the books, to the film, and to bring this kind of, modern sensibility to it without violating it, and Let's see if I pull it off. It was a very fun project. And it was one of those things where the key idea, and I hope, and please don't make me sound like an asshole, because I think most writers are this way. I always think like M. Night Shyamalan is, one day just sitting in a shower going, he's dead. It's like you don't know where this stuff comes from, and there's a core idea at the heart of this that is so much better than I'm capable of, that I don't know where it came from. It's one of those things where I just drive along and I was like, whoa, shit. It's like if I can pull up a script that's as good as the idea at the center of it, it'll be great. But yeah, I'm finishing that up, which is really fun. And I'm doing I've adapted a short story that I optioned by Dennis Lane, who wrote Mystic River and Gone Gone. Scorsese's doing Shutter Island right now, which is one of Dennis's books. It's a short story called Until Gwen, and it's a great love story with this great dark crime element and this twisted father-son relationship. And I adapted myself, and I'm in the process of, we've got financing and directing it sometime in the next year or so. But I try to sort of do. My goal is to write sort of big studio things that I really care about. If I don't love it, I can't write it. But sort of do those jobs, and it makes it a little bit easier to hand it off to people who are going to muck around with it. If I sort of have things, those are smaller things that I get to really have some control over. So I'll probably make more of the Batman cartoon than I'll make directing until Gwen, but that's okay. So that's pretty much it for the short-term future.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
So there you go. Revisit Batman Gotham Knight. Guess what? It's available on Amazon Prime. It's available on YouTube, all to rent or purchase. iTunes, Google Play, Vudu. You know where it isn't? DC Universe Streaming. Isn't that interesting? And I imagine it's a rights issue. That's my guess. Because otherwise, why wouldn't they do it? My God, it's fantastic. Kevin Conroy plays Batman throughout. It's a great cast, and like you heard, wonderful writers, man, and truly very interesting shorts. You may want to revisit Batman Gotham Knight. Once again, maybe that would be an interesting Christmas gift for somebody this year. Thanks again for listening to Word Balloon, brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners via Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon. Thank you for your subscriptions, League. Also, Word Balloon brought to you by Aftershock Comics. Really great books coming. This week, Matthew Klickstein's 4th issue, If You Are Obsolete. Think Children of the Corn meets kids on today's social media networks and what happens when the kids take over, just like in Village of the Damned or Children of the Corn. Pretty cool. And a lot of other great books as well from Garth Ennis, Marguerite Bennett, Tim Seeley, Cullen Bunn, Adam Glass, unbelievable creators, and really fun stories that I think are very much worth your attention. Genre-breaking stories from today's top creators. Go to their website, check it out. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes on how to order their books through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. What can I say? Lots of great stuff coming up for Word Balloon through the month of December. Really excited about some creators. I know I've been neglecting Marvel, but I will make up for it with some creators coming up. And what else can I say, man? It's really been fun talking to everybody so far this month, and I look forward to what's scheduled and what's to come before we're saying Happy New Year. But it's going to be a fun month. Thank you for all the great birthday wishes I got last week. I claimed the month, and I really got busy and haven't had a chance to thank everybody, so I'm doing it through the podcast as well. Great private messages and emails and tweets and Facebook messages. So thank you very much, everyone, for the birthday wishes. And thank you for listening today. More great stuff coming up later this week. It's going to be a great December here on Word Balloon. Until next time, Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2019.